And welcome to the stream. My name is Lee. They-ish vibes today. Sure, he is fine. Just remember I'm not actually a woman and we'll be square. What are we doing? We are going to go here and hit this. So, I'm 6 minutes late. I'm doing Warhammer 40k today, which is fun stuff. Um, 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 so, I think what we can do is go to the Expectus Primus page, which is this one. That's if I might try. If anyone's interested, let's do that. We're gonna do two things, three actually. So, first thing I'm gonna do is, all my sorry. Beautiful. And the last thing I'm going to do is go here and do the same thing. Alright, then I promise I will get down to actually doing Warhammer 40k nonsense. Gonna be a good time. Hi, Eddie! Welcome, welcome! Hello, hello! I think what we're gonna do, let me check this over. So we're doing some notes. Last time we were doing notes, we were doing, I'm trying to remember. Last time I did a type up, oh, yes, okay, fine. Sorry, my fish are they're splashing. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. I'm going to ring up a fish cam soon, as soon as I get my camera set up. Yeah, it was Hamish, The Death World, which I was working on. Actually, though, what we could do is something a little exciting. Let me get to digging up my notes. So I have a Death Watch. You have the Undying. No, that's not what we want. PDF. Ooh, we should do, let's see. We have the first founding Death Watch, and then the other Death Watch ones are the Rites of Battle and the core. Here, let's go to the core rulebook, the original core rulebook. Then we can just go like that. Yes. All right. We can get rid of this because we don't need it. Yes, you got to whisper. Either just, I did. You said asked when I was streaming, and I think I whispered you back. With a schedule saying I was going live on Tuesday, and then I didn't go live on Tuesday because I missed the bus on Tuesday, the train on Tuesday, because of a whole series of misadventures. Yes. So I didn't end up streaming on Tuesday. I did a late night stream on Tuesday instead of the one I was supposed to do on Monday, which I was too tired to do. And then I did the Greyhawk stream on Wednesday, and then today we're doing more 40k. I was thinking I could bust out Deathwatch. I hadn't thought to. Well, okay, let's see. I wonder if there's chapter creation rules. Because that would be handy. If not, let's see. Talents, armory, chapter generating characteristics, character creation, specialties. Oh, they have the list of chapters. They have the Blood Angels, which is pretty cool. They have all the different specialties on how to create a Space Marine character. Oh, the Flesh Terrors? Actually, I think, okay, this one only has Blood Angels and the Dark Angels. But I think, hang on, give me a sec to bring up I want to say Rites of Battle has the Flesh Terrors. Here we go. Other chapters. Chapters. Creating your own, they have a create your own chapter section. Imperial Fist, successor chapters, second, Ultramarine successors, Dark Angel successors, Blood Angels, Flesh Terrors. Ha! There is a whole section on Flesh Terror lore. I don't actually know much. My this one is the Rites of Battle. My knowledge of Flesh Terror lore is limited, but I can bring sources up. The Blood Angel Legion was known to have at least 5 second founding successors: the Angels Encatamine, Angels Sanguine, Angels Vermilion, and Blood Drinkers, and the Flesh Terrors. The vision of the Legion was achieved largely according to the dictates of Codex Astartes, because they were, let's see. Here we go. Codex Astartes, for the Blood Angels, were not too proud to follow the example set by their brother Legion. In the aftermath of the loss, their Primarch considered there would be far greater issues to overcome than how the chapter should be organized. In the immediate aftermath, the Blood Angels and their successors were afflicted with a great sense of loss, grieving for their fallen Primarch, Sanguinius, who actually is the only of the Primarchs to have his own national holiday. It's one of the few holidays that the entire Imperium has to celebrate. Different sects of the Emperor on different Imperial worlds have different holidays and festivals, but Sanguinius is one of the ones everyone celebrates. It's a big deal. And I think... okay, wait. This one is... right here we go. But it was only later that the so-called flaw began to make itself known. Over the following centuries, the instances of Battle Brothers being overcome by visions of their Primarch's death began to increase until the chapters were forced to address the problem through the ministrations of their sanguinary priests and the establishment of the Death Company. For a while, the Blood Angels and their successors believed themselves rid of the flaw, although they would never entirely overcome their grief. They looked to the future for the first time in centuries. It was only much later, after subsequent foundings had been raised from Blood Angel genestock, that the full enormity of the flaw became known. The later foundings, it appeared, were more severe the flaw the Battle Brothers exhibited. Later the founding, the more severe the flaw the Battle Brothers exhibited. At least 2 later founding Blood Angel successors, the Exsanguinators and the Flesh Eaters, are thought to have succumbed so utterly that they cease to exist entirely. Even those successors who have largely contained the flaw stand on the verge of destruction, their Battle Brothers lapsing into psychosis at the very slightest provocation. Because of the tragic flaw the Blood Angels and their successors share, the chapters are linked to one another in the manner quite unlike the other first founding chapters and their descendants. To the Blood Angels and their successors, the death of the Primarch Sanguinius is not some long-distant legend, but a very real memory that lives on in the psyche of every one of his sons, threatens to overwhelm him in times of great stress. This shared heritage bonds the chapters in such a degree that an attack on one is regarded as an attack on all, a crime that every one of the sons of Sanguinius will rally together to punish. The Flesh Terrors have a very specific section, though, so let's see this. Second founding, so it was way back at the beginning they created the Flesh Terrors, just after the Horus Heresy, when Horus, the War Master, and I want to say he's the son of the World Eaters, or the Emperor's sons. He basically broke off, and after they defeated him, and the Emperor was put almost comatose on the Golden Throne, Roboute Guilliman, who was the Primarch of the Ultramarines, created the Codex Astartes, which was a whole list of how to break the chapters down into smaller the legions down into smaller chunks, chapter-sized. The salamanders refused, so they created the chapter that's just legion-sized. Others chapters kind of went with it. Let's see. The second founding were the ones that were founded right after that. Other times, the later foundings were just created from the same gene seed and not directly cut from the same group of space marines as the legions. Flesh Tearers have served humanity since the dawn of the Age of the Imperium. Tragically, the Flesh Tearers have become increasingly prone to the most extreme effects of the Blood Angel's flaw. To such an extent, like other Blood Angel successors, the chapter now stands at the very brink of oblivion. In later centuries, the Flesh Tearers have fallen to increasing extremes on the field of battle. The Battle Brothers' rage has known no bounds, continuing long after all enemies have been slain. Collateral damage has been excessive, and on several occasions, Allies' forces have been attacked in the immediate aftermath of a successful assault. An apparent disregard for other Imperial forces has led to a number of reported atrocities, which innocents caught in the crossfire, slain alongside genuine enemies of the Imperium. Other Imperial forces have come to abhor the chapter, and it has drawn the eye of the Inquisition. Because of course it has. In the year 815 of the 41st millennium, the position of chapter master of the Flesh Tearers passed to Gabriel Seth. Upon his ascension, Seth was informed of by the high sanguinary priest of the chapter's future was counted in decades, so extreme had the effects of the flaw become. Seth had announced his intention that should the chapter be doomed, the last passage of his histories will be filled with glory. The new chapter master intends to undo the damage done in recent centuries by mounting proactive patrols throughout the region where the enemies of mankind are known to lurk. The chapter intends to be the first to respond to calls for aid, launching utterly devastating counterattacks to turn invasions before they even begun. To date, it is too early to tell how Seth will write the last entries of Flesh Tearer's story, but already the chapter is taking steps to undo the undoubted wrongs it has committed and redeem itself in the eyes of potential allies. The Flesh Tearer's involvement in the Achilles Crusade began in 813, soon after the first tendrils of Hive Fleet Dagon bit the Ophiuchus Salient. A strike force, the Hive Fleet is the Tyranids. They're really ugly enemies. They just consume biomass and create and breed and utterly strip planets of anything living so that they can propagate more Tyranids. And that's just what they do. They don't do anything else, but that's utterly terrifying if you are a living thing in their path of being consumed. Let's see. The Achilles Crusade began 813. A strike force based around the elements of the chapter's first and second companies arrived unheralded at... Wait, okay, I'm gonna see if I can bop this up so I can read it better. Here we go. There you go. I think that's a Flesh Tearer. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure the Flesh Tearers... Let's see. Intercepting tendrils of the Hive Fleet and buying time for other inferior forces to muster a defense. The chapter took heavy losses in these actions, yet refused to slow the pace of its operations, throwing itself into battle after battle against the ravening Xenos monstrosities. The strike force is currently rearming at Elysius, and is reported that several of its squads have been witnessed in action in the depths of the Shrine Cities, engaging in brutal search and destroy missions against an unknown, yet evidently murderous foe. Let's see. So, that's all there is on that. At least in this book. There's probably more lore throughout other books. If you go to Deathwatch Rulebook to create a character, let's see. It's the Blood Angel, basic Blood Angel. Flesh Tearers may use the Furious Charge, Codica stack pattern. At reduced cost of only 1 cohesion point. Actually, that's pretty good. However, the go-to-ground defensive stance costs 3 cohesion points. It's basically a method of telling how much your squad. Flesh Terror's characters begin with Flesh Render talent. However, the character suffers from a minus 15 fellowship, which is basically your likability as a Space Marine. The Flesh Terror forces operating on Eleusis has become embroiled in an unfortunate fratricidal incident in which a battle brother from another Space Marine chapter was slain. It just so happens that the kill team contains a battle brother of the same chapter. Oh, this is Adventure Seed if you are a Flesh Terror character and you want to run a GM through this kind of roleplay based in the 40k universe. And as word of the incident reaches Watch Fortress Ariok, tensions between the two lead to outright confrontation. In truth, the story of fratricide is a lie sown by dissonant factions within the population of Elysius. But until this fact is uncovered, perhaps while the kill team is operating on the world, the cohesion will suffer. So you can give your characters basically a backstory of ugliness, because the Flesh Terrors do tend to have a lot of collateral damage, so killing someone from another chapter wouldn't be unheard of. But yeah, that's all the information there is in this one. I don't know what else you wanted to know. I can look up other information. I'm not particularly knowledgeable on the Flesh Terrors. I know they're a really ugly... I mean, a lot of the Blood Angel successor chapters have some problems. The two chapter flaws. Let me go back to this one. Blood Angels. This is 41. There's definitely a little bit on the... Oh, yeah. That's Black Templar. Blood Angels. Here we go. There should be Sons of Sanguinius. The Red Thirst. The Red Thirst is a demeanor unique to Space Marines from the Blood Angel chapter. Deep within the psyche of every Blood Angel is a destructive yearning, a battle fury and blood hunger that must be held in abeyance in every waking moment. Few battle brothers can hold the Red Thirst in check unceasingly. It is far from unknown for Blood Angels to temporarily succumb to its lure at the height of battle. The Red Thirst is the Blood Angels' darkest secret and greatest curse, but it's also their greatest salvation, for it brings with them this a humility and understanding of their own failings, which makes them truly the most noble of Space Marine chapters. I think that's more the Blood Drinkers vibe. Hang on. The Flesh Terrors. I think that's more the Angels of Absolution. Flesh Terrors. I think that's more the Blood Drinkers vibe than the... The Battle Brothers of the Blood Drinkers must keep their unnatural craving for blood at bay or else suffer the consequences. A Blood Drinker's character must make a challenging willpower test before every mission. If the test is passed, the character will benefit from plus 10 to his weapon skill for the duration of the mission. If the test has failed, will have to consume at least a pint of blood during the mission or suffer minus 10 to all willpower and fellowship checks for the entire mission until he does so. Furthermore, should any Battle Brothers other than those of the Blood Angel chapter or one of its successors witness the grisly spectacle, the kill team will immediately lose 5 cohesion points. In essence, the player will have to engineer such an opportunity with the GM's collusion and make the other players remain ignorant until a suitable pneumatic moment. Yeah. The Black Rage. Yeah, the Black Rage is what happens when the Red Thirst goes too far, and that's when it's irreversible. Once it becomes the Black Rage, there's no going back. You're just a killing machine until you're dead, which, if there are any friendlies around, is not helpful. But yeah, the Red Thirst and the Black Rage, Rage are the big ones. But yeah, the Blood Drinkers are the vampire ones. The Flesh Terrors are just known for a lot of hella collateral damage. And they get the ability to rip open flesh-rending talent. Actually, I can just look up what the flesh-rending talent is out of curiosity. Core rulebook. Let me go. Boom. Yeah, Space Marines. Talents and traits. 112. Only the Blood Drinkers successor chapter is the vampire ones. I don't think any of the other, let's see. I don't think any of the other Blood Angel successor chapters, like the Flesh Terrors or the Angel Sanguine, I don't think any of them are known to drink blood. I think it's more of a Blood Drinkers thing, but hence the name. But I could be wrong on that one. The Flesh Terrors definitely have their own flaws. Flesh Render. The Battle Brother has a taste for massive damage that can be inflicted with chain weapons and other melee weapons that rip apart the flesh of their enemies. When inflicting damage with a melee weapon that has the tearing quality, the characters roll a single additional die for damage and picks the highest roll. For weapons that inflict several dice worth of damage, only a single additional die is rolled. I'm pretty sure it's only... I mean, that's the Red Thirst. Let me see. I'm going back to... I don't think... Let me see what they have on the Blood Angels, because it might be... it might just be that successor chapter. I think they definitely have... all have issues with Battle Rage and Control, but I think... Hang on. Let me see. It might say something more about it in the main Blood Angels chapter. Also, it could be only that the Blood Drinker is the one that lets it get so bad that they... the Blood Angels are noble descendants of the most puissant and angelic of the Primarchs, Sanguinius. They are perhaps the most celebrated chapters in the entire Imperium. Their countless heroic deeds and victories known to untold billions of the Emperor's subject across the length and breadth of the Imperium. Those beauteous angelic visages of the chapter's heroes adorn goth facades and stained glass windows in a million holy basilicas, and their portraits gaze serenely from endlessly copied and much cherished illuminated tomes. Yet hidden from multitudes, the Blood Angels harbor a terrible curse. When their beloved Primarch was slain at the hands of the arch-traitor War Master Horus at the height of the Horus Heresy, every Blood Angel was doomed to share the portion of the pain inflicted on his flawless form. From that day forth, every Blood Angel has been tormented by visions of the last moments of Sanguinius. The older the Space Marine gets, the more frequent and debilitating such nightmares become. Should he not fall in battle, every Blood Angel one day becomes so consumed by these soul-searing visions that he will descend into madness in which he must witness the death of Sanguinius over and over again, ever unable to intervene as the War Master enacts his vile treachery. The very inevitability of this curse emboldens the Battle Brothers, the Blood Angels, driving them ever onwards for glorious death in the name of the Emperor and their Primarch. When lesser men might have surrendered to their urgings to shed the blood of enemies of the Emperor, the Blood Angels have remained pure and noble for 10,000 years. Despite this, the chapter is dying, for each year more of its brethren succumb to the so-called Red Thirst, the desire to rend limb from limb those responsible for the death of Sanguinius, and by extension, every enemy of the Emperor. The death of Sanguinius represents one of the perfidious and tragic moments of the Horus Heresy, for he died in the hands of his brother Primarch, the arch-traitor Horus. Although some say the sacrifice weakened the War Master just enough to allow the Emperor to defeat him, the death of Sanguinius is mourned to this day, and felt keenly by the Blood Angels. In those veins, his blood still pumps. When the war calls and blood is spilled, Blood Angels are gripped by the fury born of the last moments of their Primarch's life. For some, the thirst is too great, and they are entirely overcome by what is called the Black Rage, cursed to end their days, reliving their beloved Primarch's death over and over again. Let's see. Blood Angels hail from Tree of Worlds, the rust-red desert planet of Baal, and its two barren moons, Baal Prime and Baal Secundus. While Baal itself has always been a world of red dust deserts, its moon were once paradises, yet at some time around the end of the Dark Age of technology, utter devastation was visited upon Baal and its moons. In a nameless, long-forgotten war, viral and nuclear weapons were unleashed, their effects so potent and many thousands of years later, all three worlds are still subject to deadly radiation storms. Their surfaces are scarred by vast plains of blackened glass and endless tracts of polluted desert. What must once have been oceans are now poisoned seas of toxic sludge, covered in layers of pallid dust. The people of the system must have died in their millions, but somehow humanity prevailed. The populace became scavengers, picking up the bones of their once great civilization. Many must have perished, growing sickly and feeble in the atmosphere that was radically altered. In the dark times that followed the total collapse of their societies, likely some became worse than scavengers, turned their desperation to cannibalism. That's probably where those rumors started. Upon the surface of Baal to be found, half buried amongst the ocean of dust, some evidence that of a once great civilization. Vast edifices, incredible monuments that must have been constructed with masterful skill to have stood for so long. It is obvious that the people of Baal spent their time creating mighty statues of their rulers and their gods, and it is thought through this record that those people are known. One side effect of the ensuing radioactive atmosphere was inevitable. In time, the accumulated chemical and radioactive toxins that built up in the survivors' bodies forced them to develop into mutants, shambling parodies of men their forefathers had once been. But there were some who held on to their humanity and preserved some semblance of sanity, forming tribes for mutual protection. But these were embattled few, as new and savage culture evolved amid the ruins of the old. The only social unit remaining was the tribe, for humanity and cannibal alike. The only folk that could rely on were their own kin. The people of the Baal system became nomads, shifting from place to place, picking the ruins clean, wanting to preserve the spoils that could be gathered, what spoils could be gathered. They constructed ramshackle vehicles and learned how to make rad suits and, more importantly, rad counters to protect them from their hellish, blasted environment. The tribes fought constant wars. Once they'd been close to paradise, now they were closer to hell. The Blood Angels maintained their fortress monastery on Baal and recruit from amongst the tribes of all three worlds. To be chosen in such a manner is more than the greatest of honors. It promises deliverance from the nightmarish realities of life on Baal and its moons. Only the toughest ever earns such an honor, the vast majority eking out a short, brutal life amongst the warring tribes in benighted radiation deserts. Let's see. The longest lived of all Space Marine chapters, their gene seed granting a vastly increased lifespan on all who possess it. It is not uncommon, therefore, for a Blood Angel to live for a millennium or more, if death in battle or the red thirst does not claim him first. These vastly extended lifespans allow the Blood Angels to perfect their techniques in art as well as war. They have centuries to perfect the disciplines to which they turn their minds, and this accounts for the fact that Blood Angels' armor and banners are almost the most ornate ever produced. Following the example of their Primarchs, the Blood Angels espouse a vision of the galaxy in which enemies of the Empire can be defeated and mankind can progress to the life he was always fated to live. There is a deeply mystical streak in the Blood Angels' doctrines and a strong belief that things can be made better. After all, the Blood Angels are recruited from the scrofulous wastelands of Baal, and if such can be transformed into a tall, proud, handsome warrior, then there is hope for mankind yet. And this belief can be seen in everything the Blood Angels do. They strive for perfection in all their endeavors. Their work of arts are things of beauty and symmetry. Their martial disciplines are practiced unceasingly. Their doctrines are permeated with a sense of mortality and fallen greatness of man. The beatific countenance and noble bearing of the Blood Angels is a stark contrast to the curse they bear. While lesser warriors might have been morose or fatalistic, weighed down by the inevitability of their fate, Blood Angels remain stoic. Blood Angels' cadre of sanguinary priests, the equivalent of apothecaries in other chapters, tirelessly pursue a cure to the red thirst, but each year more and more brethren succumb to it. Perhaps in an effort to hold the curse at bay, many Blood Angels sleep in the same casket where the bodies were transformed the ragged Baalite wastelanders to perfect forms they emerge in, the arcane machinery filtering and purifying their blood as they slumber. This is even true of many Blood Angels seconded to serve in the Death Watch. Their caskets are stored within a watch station or watch fortress, and Blood Angels sleep there to heal any wounds suffered during a mission, emerging whole and unsullied once more. The quest for perfection in all they do makes Battle Brothers the Blood Angels ideal warriors to serve in the Death Watch, yet their curse becomes all the more terrible. A Blood Angel may find himself isolated from other of his kin while he serves in the Death Watch. He appears a paragon of virtue to his fellow Death Watch Battle Brothers, but by night he fights damnation alone in his cell, praying fervently that the curse will not claim him here, so far from his chapter and the sanguinary priest who may aid him on his final journey. When the red thirst takes hold, it can only be overcome with extreme difficulty. Sorry, I don't need to know. I don't know how I can store all this anyway, but basically, the Blood Angels, I'm just reading through it, the basics. No, the Blood Angels, so the Blood Angels don't come from the planet Baal. They, the people of Baal are really radiation scarred, and there's a huge problem there, and most die young. So to be chosen for becoming part of the Blood Angels, actually, I think there is a blood drinking ritual. Let me check something. I'm not good at storing it. I learned bits and pieces. I mean, I couldn't recite word from word. Reading isn't my strong suit, but I do manage to pick up some information. Let's see. What is it? Oh, yes. Violent games, battling both the harsh landscape of the homeworld and ultimately each other. The contestants hold once in a generation at the very place Sanguinius first came to Baal, Angel's Fall. Aspirants must reach the so-called place of challenge by whatever means they can, a process that weeds out weaker individuals, hoping to join the ranks of the Blood Angels. They must race across uncharted miles of hostile irradiated desert. They must leap from the highest cliffs, praying that the primitive assembly of wings each bears will save them from sudden death. They must find their way through canyons infested with gigantic mutated beasts. Desiccated husks of previous hopefuls bear witness to those who undertook the trials rashly. Once they reach the place of challenge, the gladiatorial contest, offered to the very death, ensure that only most skilled and determined fighters survive. Of the 50 or so victors, once 50 or so victors have been separated from the unsuccessful aspirants, they will be taken by Thunderhawk gunship to fulfill the next stage of their trials. Those who fail are nonetheless granted positions of honor when they return to their tribes, for the mere fact of having survived the trials, even if not selected, is a great feat in itself. Successful aspirants take the Fortress Monastery of the Blood Angels, where they witness sights such as magnificent glory that many are struck down with awe. They are taken before the full battle brethren, and it is here that the contrast between aspirant and space marine is truly evident. Despite their youth, very few of the aspirants will be untouched by the ravages of the blasted land in which they have lived. Their bodies are riddled with cankers and sore, their faces marred by legions. In contrast, the towering physiques of the space marines on them are the very ideal of perfect beauty. Smooth kin and features noble. Having observed the grueling vigil of 3 days and 3 nights, the aspirants are led away by the chamber's sanctuary priests who fulfill not only the role of apothecary, but the bearers of the Primarch's most sacred blood. Each aspirant must partake of this blood. Okay, this is where the vampirism comes from. So, each of the aspirants must drink the blood, which is born in a chalice proffered to them by a priest. Soon after sipping the precious liquid, the aspirants fall into a profound sleep and are taken to the hall of the sarcophagi. The walls of this vast cathedral-like chamber are lined with mighty golden caskets, each twice the size of a man. The sleeping aspirants are entombed within, dwarfed by the sides of the huge sarcophagi, and attached to an array of life-sustaining nodes. There they remain for 1 full year, fed intravenously with nutrients and injected with the blood of Sanguinius. As the aspirants slumber, they are engulfed by vivid and strange dreams, depicting memories of Sanguinius himself. Thus, the very essence of the Primarch permeates the minds of his new sons, and afterwards these potent emotions and memories will be permanently imprinted upon their souls. When the aspirants finally move from the sarcophagi, they've been changed so thoroughly that few could believe they were once twisted creatures rescued from living hell of their prior lives. They have become tall, immensely strong, and superhumanly powerful. Their resurrected bodies have taken into a hauntingly beautiful reminiscent of the angelic forefather. Their senses keener, their muscles stronger, and then tempered steel. Through this arcane process and lost technology, the scrofulous wastelanders transformed into a being of radiant, pure, and noble purpose. Alright, so, to sum it up, because I know, they do have to drink the blood of Sanguinius as part of them turning into Blood Angels. I'm pretty sure all the successor chapters most likely have to do the same thing, or at least something similar. Flesh Tearers are just known for causing collateral damage and getting so caught up in the red. They get so caught up in the red thirst that they forget what they're fighting and end up hurting their allies after the enemies are dead. Stuff like that. That's the Flesh Tearers. The ones who drink. Actually, let's see the Blood Drinkers. The Blood Drinkers have attained their current level of control over the red thirst by not denying it or controlling it, by surrendering themselves to it. Each one of the chapter's rituals and observances are based on the consumption of blood, often in massive quantities. The source of the blood used in these ceremonies is unknown, as is the form the ritual takes. It is probable the blood is drawn from the Battle Brothers' own veins, or perhaps from slain predators whose qualities the brethren covet. In some quarters, however, it is whispered that the blood is offered unwillingly by captives, fallen enemies, or even by innocents. Okay. So, the Blood Drinkers are the ones who drink blood. That's their thing. Hence, Blood Drinkers. The Flesh Tearers are the ones who tear flesh. But yeah, the Blood Drinkers are the vampire chapter. The Flesh Tearers are just wild in their rage. They're both descendants from what's the one? The Blood Angels, which means that when the Blood Angels were split up after the Horus Heresy, they created a bunch of other chapters, including the Blood Drinkers and the Flesh Tearers. Or maybe the Blood Drinkers were created later, but they, their Primarch is Sanguinius, who is the head of the Blood Angels, who was killed in the Horus Heresy. Maybe. There's a mysterious space marine who might be some form of resurrected Sanguinius that appears in lore, but it's not official. That he is the Sanguinius. But yeah, the blood drinkers are the ones that drink blood. The flesh tearers just rip people to shreds, including their allies sometimes, which causes some problems, which is why they're, according to the new chapter master, going to fall apart and be destroyed by the Inquisition soon. Although they're trying to make up for that. What is this? Let me see what else they have about the blood drinkers. Nope, that's the son of Sanguinius. Rites of battle. Far fewer of its battle brothers fall to the so-called Black Rage. To all appearances, the noble brethren of the Blood Drinkers have attained a level of control and perfection exceeding even their progenitor legion. But of course, it's deceptive because they drink blood to do it. None have witnessed the Blood Drinkers' sanguinary rites, not even their brethren amongst other Blood Angel successors, and they go to great lengths to conceal them from all outsiders. While the Blood Drinkers may appear to have obtained control over their flaw, it is just as likely they have doomed themselves in other ways, and their future is just as uncertain as that of the remainder of the Blood Angel successors. They came to the Jericho Reach at the close of 816 of Millennium 41. So, which is 3 years after the Flesh Terrors were off fighting the chunk of the Hive Fleet. The Blood Drinkers were in the Jericho Reach. Mere months before the first tendrils of Hive Fleet Dagon struck the world, Castobel. Something in the chapter was drawn to Castobel by the scent of blood. The two companies of Battle Brothers taking up residence in the highest spire of the Hive, Ibelius, and fortifying it as a protracted siege. It was not long before the Tyranid struck, and when they did, the Blood Drinkers were waiting. Alone of all Castobel's hives, Ibelius stood against the billion-strong horde, and the noble, almost beatific Battle Brothers manning the walls and setting such an example for the Hive militias that they said the men sang with joy as they fought, knowing that they could never fail. It was only later that dark rumors began to circulate despite the best efforts of the militias, commissars, and Hive enforcers. Some claimed that the Xenos infiltrators were stalking the Hives by night, but others spun a far more disturbing yarn. The rumors told that people dragged screaming from their beds late at night and terrible blood-curdling cries emerging from the spire of the Blood Drinkers used as their headquarters. Still later, it was said that the enforcer patrols found exsanguinated corpses deep in the Hive sinks, battered and pulped as if thrown from the greatest heights of the spire. None can locate the source of these dark tales, which many rumormongers claim is proof in itself that something's afoot. The people of Castobel are fighting for their existence against a foe that might have overwhelmed them months ago, were not for the heroic deeds of the Blood Drinker, and so now, for now at least, the few blood-drained corpses easily blamed on alien stalkers are the least of their worries. So, very clearly, they coach it in, plausible deniability terms, but the Blood Drinkers, at least this particular chapter, it said it was 2 battle companies of Blood Drinkers. I don't know if there are other battle companies other places, but 2 in Castobel, which is 200. So there's 10 chapters, at least. I should front this with Codex compliant chapters are 10 companies of 100 Space Marines each. The 10th company being the Scouts, or the newly initiated Battle Brothers, who move up the ranks as they get better into higher companies as people die off of the higher companies, essentially. And the Blood Drinkers, hang on. Yeah. Ooh, there's also the Knights of Blood. I find it weird that this chapter has the name Blood Drinker and no one, thinks it's weird. I guess if the Blood Angels and the Flesh Terrors, they all have very violent, bloody sounding names because Blood Angels. It is not known which of the foundings produced the Knights of Blood chapter, but they are acknowledged as a successor chapter of the Blood Angels. It is likely the chapter is drawn from the much later founding, for with so many other late founding Blood Angel successors, its gene seed appears to be deeply, indeed tragically deficient. What is known is that the Knights of Blood began a galactic crusade to purge the Emperor's foes, the Imperium. While many Blood Angel successors have walked a perilous path between purity and damnation, the Knights of Blood have committed so many excesses that at the beginning of the 41st millennium they were decreed renegades by the High Lords of Terra themselves and cast beyond the light of the Emperor. Oh, wow. So, even as the blood drinkers are hanging around drinking actual people's blood, they're not as bad as the Knights of Blood, and the Flesh Tearers are off friendly firing, ripping their own people to shreds at the end of the battle. Apparently, neither of them are as bad as the Knights of Blood, who go around and destroy people. Alright. Following the declaration, the Knights of Blood largely disappeared from the annals of the Imperium, though they have continued to fight the enemies of mankind. They're still trying to help people out, because that's what you do when you're a Space Marine, I guess, unless you go full chaos and try to destroy humanity or bring down the Imperium. On several occasions, the chapter has intervened to aid beleaguered Imperial forces, though the assistance is rarely welcomed. To accept the help of a chapter declared renegade is to invite the balefly of the inquisitional scrutiny, and so many would rather take their chances without such aid. To date, the Knights of Blood have kept their distance from those they are ostensibly allied with, a fact that has protected such forces from censure, as well as the collateral damage often associated with some of the extreme Blood Angel successors. See, Flesh Tearers. And frickin' blood drinkers who are off vampiring the people in the hive they're supposed to be protecting. Nevertheless, the Knights of Blood continued their crusade against the galaxy. Across the galaxy, a task they seem driven to perform. The extent to which Blood Angels, their successors, and indeed the remainder of the Adeptus Astartes choose to accept the Knights of Blood chapter's outcast status remains to be seen. Sometimes other chapters all but ignore such decrees, refusing to accept that any of their own can cast such a judgment. On occasion, however, Space Marine chapters have been extremely zealous in prosecuting wars against their own outcast kin, and death and destruction has ensued. I mean, they have to do that with Chaos Marines, but Chaos Marines are a whole different thing. They all split off the Horus Heresy, mostly, so it's a different thing than something like the Knights of Blood, who never went to Chaos, you know what I mean? Rumors of the presence of Knights of Blood operating in Jericho Reach for several years, but they've never appeared in any officially sanctioned order of battle, and as far as can be ascertained, no communication has ever been exchanged between them and the, yeah, I guess the Flesh Tearers are badass. However, the badassery doesn't end when the battle does. They have trouble reining it in after the fight, so they tend to, get into trouble afterward, hurting their allies. Yeah, they kill everything, including after the battle's over, their allies, which gets them into trouble. Not as much trouble as Knights of Blood, apparently, but still trouble. Like, they haven't been officially censured yet. Yeah, Flesh Tearers are just badass. I agree. They're pretty cool. Hang on. I mean, Flesh Tearers are pretty cool. Let's see. There's no communications between the Knights of Blood and the Achilles Crusade High Command. Yet after the time, Imperial forces have reported the appearance of black and red liveried Space Marines appearing unheralded and departing, having intervened in battle. Gun cam feeds and orbital spy lens captures have provided only incomplete details of the identities of these mysterious battle brothers, who rarely take the field in great numbers, but who always do so to great effect. Word has dutifully been passed to representatives of the Inquisition, and several cells are actively seeking confirmation of whether it is indeed the Knights of Blood. If the chapter's presence in the Jericho Ridge is confirmed, then matters will necessarily escalate. It is the duty of every imperial servant to prosecute those declared enemies of the emperor, even those they once called brother. The Inquisitions and the Achilles Crusade High Command will be forced to walk a perilous tightrope if or when they discover that the apostate Blood Knights are indeed operating in Jericho Reach. Interesting. But yeah. I think I ran a Deathwatch game for someone who was a Knight of Blood and had served in the Deathwatch as a Black Shield, meaning he kind of lied about what chapter he came from and just kind of covered it up. You can do that for the Deathwatch, which is pretty cool. Basically, you take you paint your armor black, completely black, and also paint the pauldron rather than just leaving it the way other Battle Brothers and Deathwatch do. The whole point of the Deathwatch is that all these Space Marines from all these different chapters work together. Instead of having one chapter who all fights together, the Deathwatch is just a bunch of different Space Marines from different chapters who all work together, which is pretty cool, but which is pretty cool in terms of a role-playing game, but kind of not useful for in terms of a tabletop army, because if you run a tabletop army using Deathwatch rules, you have to figure out exactly the strengths and weaknesses of each individual battle brother to make, where they come from, to figure out their training and what stats they use, I guess. I've never actually played on the tabletop, so I wouldn't know. But if you have all of the same chapter, they all have the same stats, the same, vibe. But, I'm gonna check something real quick. Rites of Battle has a... I'm gonna shift, because what I wanted to do was... page 14, creating your own... Out of curiosity for... In order to create a new chapter, simply work through the topics presented over the following pages, selecting detail that most appeal. Ultimately, roll on the many tables provided if leaving the whole process to the vagaries of fate appeals more. Each of the topics opens with a simple question and then proceeds to offer several potential answers. By answering these questions, a new chapter is born. So you could also just make up a new Blood Angel successor chapter, if you wanted. Although the Flesh Terrors are kind of badass, despite all the friendly fire. Some players might start this process with a specific end product in mind, and that is fine. It is a simple matter to steer the result in any given direction. Conversely, players might just as well take each topic as it comes, selecting the result that appeals most before continuing on. This system is designed to cover a great many topics, but of course some players may not need to cover every single one, or might want to add yet more detail. Either is fine, and as one player may not care about how natives of his chapter are governed, while others might want to know exactly what tributes the villages offer before the gates of the Keep of the Skywarriors every midsummer. If the system throws up more detail than is needed, players should feel free to simply bypass the relevant section. If it does not offer enough, they are encouraged to add more. What was I doing? Oh yeah, I had a chapter, let's see if I remember. My goal was to create, not the expected premise, Ultra Rounds. My goal was to create a chapter, a Space Marine chapter, just kind of from scratch. I actually worked out a bunch of lore for them. Let me see if I have, there we go. 20 companies instead of 10. founding the second Urbuta Gilliman of Ultra Rounds, yes. Let's see what the official Death Watch has to say on that. If you'll indulge me for a little bit of world building, because that's what we do. When and why and where was the chapter created? Chapters are established at the order of the High Lords of Terror, but the process by which the order comes about is a subject discussed only within the sealed chambers of the Senatorum Imperialis. It is likely that many chapters have been created with a specific role in mind, whilst others have been founded due to general increase in the activities of the Emperor's numerous enemies. Determine the original reason your chapter was created. Choose or randomize between strategic... build a world? Oh, darling! Hello, welcome. Do you want to... Here, I'll show you how we do world building. Welcome. Also, hello. Also, thank you for making the little emotes, for me. I put them in because... Yeah. Alright. Why don't we... Let's do a little world building. You know what? Let's do it. We'll start with, we'll start a brand new document. Hang on. Boop. We'll start with a blank page and we'll build a world. We already have a little bit, so we can cheat a little bit. We already have a name. Turlatia. Which actually, so what do we know about this? When you're building a world, you kind of start with what kind of world? So we're 40k, so... Also, if any of you have any cool planet names, not for Turlatia, but for, I think it was a portmanteau of Turtle Island and Appalachia. That was what Turlatia was about. That's why I gave it that name. But also, I need, more, I have a list, actually. Well, okay. Save this. And then go to... I have a list of cool names for planets, and I am out of cool names for planets. So, because I think I already used Corstanus and Grelf for something else. I think I have notes on them in here. I just haven't typed them up yet. But, if you have any cool planet name suggestions, I'll put them on my list for later planets. But for now, let's see. Turlatia. So we know Warhammer 40k, right? So the first thing you would say is, well, what kind of planet is it? What's the tech level? If you know it's set in the Warhammer 40k universe, you know it's inhabited by humans. So, that's what you start with. If you're just randomly world building, you can create a world and say it's inhabited by elves or aliens or... But we are an imperial world, therefore, humans. It's also a space marine. We know it's a space marine, we know it's a space marine homeworld. And therefore recruiting world. So we know that the space marines recruit from here. We also know it has a problem with feral orcs. Now, because we had that earlier. So, they pick those who show promise in fighting the feral orcs is their recruitment method. So, we know that. Now, the question then becomes, when you're creating a world, we know this. What else can we build off of that? So you have, well, usually you would start with, like, language. But tech level is a good place to start. Also, continent structure, how much ocean versus land, how close to the equator is the land, what's the climate like, stuff like that. That's a good basis for stuff. Of course, you could skip immediately to the societal half of it, but depending on how you're angling for it. Now, to have a problem with feral orcs, it means we need probably jungles. Maybe not Catachan level jungles, but we could actually start drawing a map if we wanted, but okay, so, how many continents is probably a good start? Okay, sure. You know what? I was gonna build this one for the Ultra rounds, but you know what? Sure. We can do that. Alright. What are we gonna call it, though? And darling, if you have any good ideas for planet names. A new world for Blood Angel... A new Blood Angel chapter. Separated after the Horus Heresy. Okay. Question, is it a second founding chapter or a later founding chapter? That is to say, were they broken off right after the Horus Heresy or were they broken off earlier? Because that's an important question. But also, what should we call this planet? Because I have two planet names that I think I might have already used after. Okay, so it's a later founding chapter. Fair enough. The question then is, are they a successor chapter of one of the other successor chapters of the Blood Angels, or they were direct from the Blood Angels? And if so, which of the successor chapters were they successor chapters of, if that makes sense? Because, Escarlata Moon. Okay, start with that. Makes sense. Escarlata Moon. Alright, and is Escarlata Moon is that the planet or the moon? And if it is, because is it the moon itself that's inhabited by the, or is it the planet? Isn't it Luna? Wouldn't it be Escarlata Luna? If I remember correct, if my Spanish is good. Unless, you know, although Luna is often used to refer to specifically... Okay, so, and is the planet just Escarlata? Or is the planet have a different name? Important question. Okay, let's not get rid of this nonsense, too. Times New Roman. We're gonna actually do something useful with this. Okay, so the planet is Escarlata, and then Escarlata's moon is the one, which just... Fair enough. Space Marine chapter that is a, so does the moon... So the planet is Escarlata, and then there's the moon of Escarlata, which has, Space Marine chapter that is a... Alright. To the Blood Angels. Alright. So far, so good. So, the question is the moon a gas giant, or the planet, rather? The planet of Escarlata. So we got the moon is inhabited. So we have the moon is inhabited. Let's see, the moon is inhabited. The planet... Is the planet inhabited, or is it just like a gas giant? And if so, how, like, are the Space Marines with the Fortress Monastery on the moon, and then there's the planet below, which also has presumably human population, or is it just the moon that's inhabited? That's an important question, because, you know, that is the first question. How far, alright. I'm probably... Maybe it's... what you can do with this is, Okay, who are the villains? That's the question. So someone's on the moon is attacking in waves, but who? That's the question. Because at what point do the at what point does the chapter be unable to conquer the moon? Needs to get take a high sig. No, here's the question. So moon is inhabited by enemies of the Imperium. So okay, so wait, if the moon the moon is inhabited by enemies of the Imperium, at least temporarily. But the question becomes, at what point do the question is, why can't the Space Marines actually kill them off? Because here's the thing, if the Space Marines are on the chapter, okay, yeah, someone has the moon, but who took the moon, and why can't they fully take it back? Because if there's someone attacking the planet in waves while the Space Marine chapter is living on their planet, they almost certainly would go for a direct assault on the moon at some point. The question... Oh. Alright, so you got this... Alright, so you got the chapter, Space Marines, okay, by enemies, so it's been taken over by Tyranids. Alright, that's a very different thing, but that's a completely separate thing from world building, but alright, we'll go with it. Is inhabited, is slowly being taken over by Tyranids, because that's... So they're defending the moon. But is the moon their homeworld, or is it just a moon they're randomly defending? Because if it's the moon of their homeworld, that's a very different... I mean, it's not necessarily important to plot, but it's an important note. You know, is the moon... is it just a moon that's being taken over by Tyranids of a planet that they have to defend because... Ah! Okay. Fair enough. I was just kind of going... But this is why... Alright, hang on. This... Okay. So, hang on. If the moon was, the Blood Angels... So maybe the moon... Here's the thought. Escarlata. Moon... Okay, so... But has been... taken by Tyranids. Okay, has been taken by Tyranids. Has been taken by Tyranids. So if the moon was their fortress monastery, it was taken by the Tyranids, forcing the planet. Okay, so forcing the. Because when you create a world, usually. If you're creating an inbuilt conflict, Tyranids are not a good inbuilt conflict, usually, because the thing about Tyranids is they can't become a protracted problem the way orcs can. But, alright. But all of this is secondary then. So if the successor that has been taken by Tyranids forcing the, chapter... This is why I do not like lag, because we're getting complicated. Okay. To retreat down to the planet and fight a protracted... Alright, wait a second. The timeline doesn't line up, though. The Tyranids didn't start... The Tyranids didn't appear in the galaxy until well after the Horus Heresy was over and done with. I mean, you could have them out fighting something else, and but the Tyranids, that's the thing about the Tyranids, is they didn't happen until millennia later. The Horus Heresy, for reference point, happened in, fair enough, a new enemy. Or, they were out fighting something else, as opposed to the Horus Heresy. Because here's the thing, if they weren't on Ball, then they would have had to be a successor chapter, right? If it was something they... So, if you're creating the world from scratch, instead of using Ball, then it would be a successor chapter, so they probably wouldn't have fought in the Heresy, which means they're out fighting something else. But is it the moon that's being taken, or the planet? That's, so wait. To fight to fight a protracted war. and defend their territory. So, okay, so if that's the case, but that's the question is, all right, so the moon, but you're thinking of a completely separate, what you're thinking of is something that's not quite world building, because the question of world building isn't what enemies you're fighting. That's completely not irrelevant to world building, but it's not what the meat of it is. For example, how many continents? So you have a group of a successor chapter of the Blood Angels that had a fortress monastery on the moon, and they were forced to give it up. Mission isn't world building. Mission is a completely different skill set. That's not also not my area of expertise. World building is like, okay, let's take our Scaletta for example. Alright, so, okay, world building is completely separate from what you're thinking of. World building is more like, alright, the moon houses Space Marine chapter. Alright, so, the Fortress Monastery. The Fortress Monastery, the thing you talk about with world, okay, so Escarletta, that's the moon, right? You would say, okay, if Escarletta is the moon, or Escarletta is the, alright, more like, how to explain world, alright, I'm sorry, I'm thinking in terms of mission building, my brain's all scrambled. Okay, Escarletta is the moon that houses Space Marine chapter, right? The planet is, okay, Escarletta Luna. Let's do that. The planet is called Escarletta. The things you want to know about, and the chapter has built, has several, has had a recruitment, a recruitment center just to the east of the Central Sea. We'll go with just to the east of the Central Sea. No, hang on, that's not right. Which is distinct from the Outer Sea. Hang on. Most land in the world is structured, a ring of islands between the two, essentially. A ring of islands that the two bodies of water. Okay, so we got the two oceans. You got the inner sea and the outer sea, right? And this is just what you do. You just kind of spitball this, and then you're like, okay, well, if there's a central sea, then what does that contrast with in the outer sea? Well, okay, so the land is kind of a ring of islands separate into body of water with numerous straits in between. Burning Ring of Tyranids. No, it's not gonna, hopefully it's not gonna get, go down in the Burning Ring of Premius. Between. Okay, so it's got this ring of islands with the numerous straits, along with the eastern continent, So there's the continent and the ring. Well, okay. Orc boys you have to burn, or their mass, okay. Or the spores take in and you get problems with feral orcs. Okay, so the Eastern Continent. The Eastern Continent is on the warmer side of temperate, or ranges from is 80% farmland, okay, so there's two separate ethnic groups. The ones that come from the continent and the ones that come from the rings. And while they've mixed and matched over the centuries of having the planets, especially once so it was first, they were, they've been, so what, the 2,000 years ago, right? Because if there's a 10,000 year history between the Horus Heresy and the modern day Imperium, and you have a successor chapter that was founded at some point. 2,000 years, this planet has been under the control of the current, the chapter has been under control of the chapter for 2,000 years. Good, solid, long history. Before then, while the, various but this is what happens when you do world building. If you say, okay, well, this is the history, this is the people, this is what cities, this is where there are cities, this is where there's country, this is what they grow, this is what the militia taxes, that's how you do world building. This is what we're doing right now. You see Scarletta. Okay, well, what do you have there? What's on this planet? So, okay, the moon's being attacked by Tyranids, and it was the home to a Blood Angel successor chapter. That's all well and good, but to world build, you need to say, well, what's the planet like? It has 2 oceans, and it has the Eastern Continent, and it has, the Northern Sea would be, any ocean north so there's the North Sea. That's the part north and Eastern Continent. And then there's several. Well, yes, okay, sure. There would be a thing, but then you would have to say, well, what was the planet like before the attack, and how did the attack affect the planet? For example, if there are defensive batteries, several of the ring islands are actually on the North Sea. Here we go. Look, you're right. So what we could do is say, okay. Northernmost island, but we... defensive, and, are the... are... how to explain that they, yes, true, there is, world build in both directions. True, but at what point do you have to create an endpoint on the, and then you go in all the directions on the time. Basically, you start with an endpoint beyond which there is nothing on the timeline, and then you can build back and maybe choose a focal point that's farther back on the timeline and then go both directions on that one, but and are used large defense batteries. Here we go. Organization. So, most of the land is comprised of large ringed islands, separates with numerous straits between them, along with the eastern continent. So, the recruitment center on the just east of the Central Sea, on one of the larger islands, which takes up okay, hang on. Okay, just the east of the Central Sea. The Central Sea and the Outer Sea. Depends on if there was time. Like, depends on the chapter. The Salamanders absolutely would, run act as a rear guard for an evacuation of the area. The Flesh Terrors, probably not so much. It depends on how much the particular chapter cares about the people. They would definitely make an effort to begin evacuations, and, whether the Marines themselves agreed to organize such an evacuation and act as rear guard, there would definitely be an evacuation organized by other Imperial forces. The Marines are not the only... They act for the Imperium. They're only a piece on the board. So, if there was an overwhelming threat and the Marines were fighting it, it wouldn't be unheard of for, say, either the Inquisition or the Planetary Governor to start trying to organize civilian evac, especially if they were an Imperial Guard. The Northern Sea, not the Northern Sea. Planetary scale defense batteries. Okay, hang on. Well, that's the question is, are they evacuating the planet? Or are they using, if the Tyranids haven't gotten to the planet yet, it could be a question that they evac the population. But that's a whole separate, like, okay, yeah, the population, we haven't even gotten to the population yet. You know what I mean? Like, okay, yes, maybe there are evacuations, but that's a question of, you know, it's worth building up how the planet was before, you know, this whole nonsense with the moon started. And, you know, it's a question of, I don't even know what the population of the planet is. So maybe, yes, it was less, but that's a whole, that's secondary. That's not, it might happen. No, it is definitely Tyranids. We agreed that the Tyranids on the moon. We said that. We kind of decided that the Tyranids were on the moon, I think. And then we kind of built the whole thing on the, you know what I mean? We can't just, I guess we could change enemies, but hang on. Just to the east of the Central Sea, the recruitment center. No, I said that that it had to have happened well after the Horus Heresy, because otherwise the Tyranids couldn't be attacking yet. I changed the timing, not the enemy. The Horus Heresy, if they couldn't have been founded just after the Horus Heresy because they're fighting the Tyranids. And it wouldn't make sense they were founded just after Horus Heresy because they wouldn't have left their homeworld to fight in the Horus Heresy because it's not Baal. We've established it's not Baal, therefore they can't have fought in the Horus Heresy because the Blood Angel Chapter successors didn't exist before the Horus Heresy. Does that make sense? They were off fighting something else, but they still had the Tyranids at home. We established this. I don't know. It's just an exercise, and I mean, we could probably actually keep this for later. No, it's actually a lot of fun. Like, okay, see, we already got. It's, it can be stressful, but it's a lot of fun. Like, what we already got Escarlata, we got the Central Sea and the Outer Sea, right? So I guess we could name all the islands, hypothetically, but we got the Eastern... but no, the most important thing, number of mines, there are two distinct... The two distinct, because, before I forget... It's like the most fun thing. Plots are... I'm not good with plots. Like, I get confused and freaked out when plots happen, but this I'm good at. Distinct ethnic groups. It's just it's not stressful. It's actually, I mean, yes, it is stressful, but, like, in a good way. Because I have to actually leave for work soon, so I gotta, my plan was to end the stream at 2:30, but I guess we gotta push it to 3, but that's okay. Alright, I mean, I think it just tastes like person to Tyranids, and that's assuming that any of them get to the planet. If they left the moon to the Tyranids and then went down to the planet to force the, keeping the Tyranids busy running around on the planet, the moon, and successfully keeping the planet safe, then they would not have had a chance to eat any of the locals. I mean, people are certainly fleeing, probably, at least in upper echelons where people know what's going on, but, because there could be whole chunks of people who don't know what's going on because whoever their successor chapter is probably didn't tell them. It's not like they're salamanders who, actually care about their people. Like, they might very well have not told the people on the planet that they might have figured that the Space Marines just decided to move down to the planet from the moon randomly. Cultural heritage, the, 3,000 years. We're upping it to 3,000 years. Oy, oy, oy. Hang on. Okay, so just after the founding, they got stuck on this planet, and then, the recruitment center includes scout barracks, what's the term? Kraken hunting. Fortress Monastery on the moon. But yeah, this is what world building means. It means, you know, names, places, the inner sea. Okay, this is what the landforms are like. This is what the people are like. This is their history. This is their, you know, ethnic groups and their, you know, how they treat the thingy, you know? This is what it means to, this is what it means to world build, to create something like this, where it, you know, where you have details about the world, the people, the, you know, all of that jazz. But here, I'll save it under Escarlata. Okay. So if there's a great big crater in the middle of the world, is it on an island in the center of the sea, or is it the sea itself that was a form of an impact crater? Because we had the Central Sea, so is the Central Sea, is it like under the water? What kind of crater? Or is it in the middle of the eastern continent? Because if it's in the middle of the continent and there's a big crater in the middle, that would be kind of interesting. But, do you mean the land crater or a sea crater? Because here. My plan was to end the stream soon, but sea swallowed the crater. Probably caused a lot of tidal waves, though. That would be a whole history thing where people still talk about how the tides, there was a huge flooding, and that was a huge historical event. If there was a meteor that hit in the middle of the ocean, and then at the bottom of the sea there's a crater, and no one, you know, knows what's down there. Except maybe if the chapters have recruitment center and they have scouts barracked on the planet, they might have scouts go down and explore the crater, and that might be a thing they have. Just spitballing. But also, I do need to end the stream because I do have to go to work soon. Because life sucks. But let me go here. Let me sorry. Invite anyone who's watching, who's curious, to the Discord. Oh, we have 4 people watching. That's fun. That's the stream Discord. I post the schedule, and specify when I'm going live, and also, you know, chat about stuff. I might create a topic for Escarlata, because it's interesting. You know, that could be a fun topic of discussion for the Discord, actually. Even if you don't join it, we're still going to put Escarlata in there. But, what else? Yeah. So, do that. You should follow the channel. It's pretty cool. Join the Discord. What else? Thank you all for watching. You guys are awesome. I do have... that, no pressure, but, you know, if you feel like dropping some coin my way. Okay, edit stream info, right. I think we're up for a raid. Yeah, the Discord link? Sure, absolutely. Give me half a sec. Boom. Discord. Alright, so we have the Discord things. You guys are awesome. Let's see. Let's go... Ramus doesn't have a lot of viewers and is a very fun artist. A lot of the people who stream this time of day are art streams. They paint little minis for tabletop games and such. Always a fun time. Tons of cool nerds, and we're raiding Ramus. So, off we trot. You guys don't have to come, but I would really appreciate it. He definitely deserves the raid, and I'll see you guys later. Alright, ready, and boop. Let me just...